Good afternoon, everyone. So I will be doing hazing is prohibited. It sounds so simple. For the case summary, we are the Thomas University, which is a comprehensive research institution in the Northeast. It is located near several um, large cities and has a student population of 20,000, as well as 8 colleges. The institution takes pride in its ability to attract students of color, and in the past 5 years, the Hispanic population has risen consistently. In this case, Z Alpha, the first male Latino Greek organization at Thomas University, is allegedly hazing its members. There are photographs brought forward to Chris Miles, a first-year African-American master's student in res life, who then gives those photos to Cynthia Johnson, a second-year master's student who is African-American and is a graduate student in Greek life, and she proceeds to give those photos to Terry Small, who I will be in this scenario, who is the director of Greek life. In the pictures, Terry noticed that there is a Board of Trustees member present at the hazing events. His name is Joseph Martinez. And then as well, there's an identifiable pledge, who is Robert Bays, and they are both present and identifiable in the photographs given to Terry, Cynthia, and Chris. The Z Alpha leadership is contacted by Cynthia to inform them that Terry needs to see them the next day and that they have pictures of alleged hazing activities. The evening that they are contacted, Chris, who was originally given the photos and is in res life, is confronted at his apartment by a group of Xi Alpha men, telling him to watch his step and that they would get back at him for turning them in. Chris is calling for the immediate suspension of Z Alpha from Thomas University. The meeting with Z Alpha leadership happens, and happens the next day. And during that meeting with Terry and Cynthia, they do not deny the hazing events or the visit to Chris's apartment. They emphasize, however, that their advisor, Chris Martinez, who is the Board of Trustees member, was present at the events, and that those type of hazing events occur at every large university within 300 miles of Thomas University. The leadership as well calls for the resignation of Chris because he has made inappropriate and racist comments to the students who are at his door. Chris then Chris learns about that. He then goes and talks to his practicum advisor, who is Luis Fernandez, who is the Director of Multicultural Affairs at Thomas University, and is shocked. Chris is shocked about his response and feedback to what he had been going through. Chris then goes back to his room, writes the incident reports so that the university administrators can take action. Chris shares Luis's response with Cynthia, and then Cynthia responds by saying she's not surprised due to her understanding that it is culture and family above all with the organizations, mainly the Latinx organizations and individuals at the university. Cynthia then shares Luis's response with Terry so that she was not blindsided if she ever went to multicultural affairs with concerns. Terry is concerned about her relationship being strained with the Latino organizations. She needs to follow up with Chris and follow up with the Latino organizations immediately. She calls Chris on the phone, and that's where we pick up on this case. So the primary decision issues, Cynthia is making the calls to the Latino organizations and disclosing information to them about that they have allegations and that they have photos present. Chris is calling for the immediate suspension of Z Alpha verbally and also through a written email to Terry and Cynthia. Terry recognizes a Board of Trustees member in the photo and then contacts her boss, Marcia Halleck. It's not disclosed what they discuss. Chris sends a demanding email of making statements to the students like, I have no interest in your group's business. And the group hears about that, and that's why they are saying that Chris is a racist and does not support the Latinx population at Thomas University. Chris being called a racist has put him into shock, and then Lewis's responses to Chris did not help in Chris's shock either. So the primary case facts, so there are pictures of alleged hazing events by Z Alpha that have been turned in. A Board of Trustees member was at those hazing events. Terry has had Cynthia do most of the organizational contacting about the hazing incidents and allegations. Chris has been confronted by members of Z Alpha and is now being deemed a racist because of his comments and turning in the organization. Terry and Cynthia have met with Z Alpha leadership, and they do not deny the hazing allegations. And they also do not deny going to Chris's house and inform them that the hazing type of events that happen at all large institutions, universities within 300 miles of Thomas University. And then Z Alpha is requesting the removal of Chris and want him to be gone from the university and from his job as a residence director. So needed additional information. I would say information about Terry and Marcia's conversation about the Board of Trustees member would be good to know how Marcia wants her, Terry, to proceed with the investigation, with what she discloses and how she discloses it. The judicial process for Thomas University is the Greek Life Office a sanctioning body at this university, or are they more of an advisory role to where the sanctions would be given or allegations and investigation would be handled by a different portion of the university? And if so, which offices do they need to involve in those investigations that will be occurring? And what is Residential Life's policy of dealing with incidences like Chris had, where he was confronted at his apartment, and the process that Chris actually used, as opposed to calling authorities to take care of the harassment? He instead confronted those individuals, and so was that the proper process that Chris should have used as well? So I'd say the principal decision makers in this scenario are Chris for turning in the information and calling for the suspension of Z Alpha, Terry, obvious that she oversees the director or the Greek life organizations at Thomas University, and then Jose is also, I would say, a primary decision maker, even though he has not really been in the scenario since he is a Board of Trustees member. The situations or the outcomes of the investigation may affect the way that he proceeds in future decisions in his role as Board of Trustees. Cynthia is also a primary decision maker. She made the calls. She knows the community and the culture at Thomas University of their Greek life. For recommended course of action, I would say looking at this through Terry's eyes at the situation that we are at. Short term, I would say that she needs to bring Chris in immediately to discuss the incidents and hear his side of the story from him, not through Cynthia or any other outlets. And then after that conversation, Terry needs to go and have a face-to-face meeting with Marcia to discuss further plans, especially since a Board of Trustees member is involved. The political ramifications of that, if it gets out, could be great to affect the institution's reputation. And so talking with Marcia, getting her input about what to do, how to proceed, what information to disclose if anything is asked about from say newspapers. And so having that conversation, getting a plan of action, and then actually officially launching the hazing investigation of the events documented. Since we do not know the judicial process at Thomas University, uh, it seems that the investigations will go through the Greek office, and so actually fully launching that investigation, bringing in Chris, Z Alpha leadership, and the identifiable student in those pictures, as well as maybe getting the individual who turned in the pictures to Chris to come in and discuss, but he is asked to be unnamed and not disclosed. So make sure that the protocols for the investigation are followed, and then whatever happens out of that investigation, that since there have been suspensions for hazing in the past couple years at Thomas University, making sure that the sanctions given to Z Alpha are within those same limits, since there is concern about hindering relationships with the Latinx organizations. And in the long term, it would be suspending Z Alpha for the appropriate amount of time, as I had just said, benchmarking or looking at benchmarking peer institutions and what they do with their advising education, since Joseph, not Joseph, sorry, Jose was present at the hazing event, understanding what other institutions of the same size do. So looking into benchmarking what other institutions do for their advisor trainings, their advisor roundtables and discussions, so that they can be on par. So if an incident like this happens again, they can also hold the advisor accountable, saying, you know, you've been trained in this way. But first off, just benchmarking, seeing where Thomas University is at, and then moving forward after understanding those benchmarks. Keep pictures of the Board of Trustees member confidential, and in the investigation files, these will be shared with Marcia, but also letting Marcia handle that upper administration process to know where to go with the organization, and where to go with the Board of Trustees, and then utilize Marcia, obviously, in those conversations, and then in the long run, create a more open relationship with multicultural affairs and Lewis. So that if instances like this do occur, we will have Lewis on our side, as opposed to making comments that sound like he is supporting hazing, and that he believes that it is culture above all, as opposed to student safety. And then there are some alternative options. So Terry makes the first contact with Z Alpha, as opposed to having Cynthia do it. And this will control the conversation, and create a better start to the investigation. In that first contact, I wouldn't disclose that they have pictures of their hazing instance. I would just let them know there's been an allegation. You need to come in and see me so we can talk about this. And then in that conversation, pull out the pictures or discuss that there are pictures that were taken. And so that controls the narrative, and hopefully will make Chris not a target from them in the future. Disadvantage, this is potentially more work for Terry, but as the director of Greek life, handling hazing events is definitely within her purview and her responsibility of making sure that those are handled properly. Also, have Chris take the pictures directly to Terry, as opposed to going through Cynthia and then Cynthia giving it to Terry. Just streamlining that process to where Chris just brings it in, gives Terry, says, hey, this is what I was told about these pictures. They were given to me by a student who doesn't want to be named. due to policy, he may have to give the name of the student who gave the pictures, but just making sure that that process happens smoother and quicker would be better, and then that cuts out hearsay and really gets to the point of the issue quicker, uh, and also gets Marcia in on the conversation sooner, so that there's not a day in between the allegation, first conversations that happen with the leadership. All in all, I think that as Terry handling the situations where we do an investigation and we make sure that the students are held accountable, like the past students with hazing. I know that the relationship between Latinx students and Terry is worrisome, and Terry is worried about losing that connection. But I also believe that by holding Zialfa accountable will show the community that if it's not, if hazing is not accepted in African American or Caucasian organizations, it won't be accepted in Latinx organizations. And so I think there's a way to where Terry could work this to where it actually strengthens the relationship and strengthens that family bond, saying we're bringing these allegations into the light because we want the safety of our students to be above all. And you can't create a true family if there is hazing occurring. And so really focusing on that aspect of the culture and making sure that that relationship is still fostered. So thank you for listening. And that is my case brief on hazing is prohibited. It sounds so simple.